Hey Spartans, Josh here. A quick content note before we get into this week's episode. You're about to meet one of 5 guest speakers that have courageously volunteered to contribute their experiences, knowledge, and support to the ongoing mental health crisis our nation is facing. For the whole month of May, I will be rolling out a 5-episode series interviewing survivors of suicide, as well as leaders in mental health awareness. We're sharing our stories of recovery in hopes that they save at least one life and hopefully many more. If you're not in the headspace to receive these stories and testimonies, please stop the podcast here. Thank you for listening, and please take care of yourselves. Let's go.
There's a different kind of grief when it comes to suicide and death by suicide.
It's a complicated grief. You just can never have any closure, basically. This is something that happens, unfortunately, to millions and millions of wives and families.
It takes the burden from that person, but it just transfers the burden
to
all the survivors. Unfortunately, there are people who ask insensitive questions or make insensitive comments. That was a struggle he had, and it was an illness that doesn't define anything about his life.
He hurt so bad inside over a lot of things and all the stress. Never lost his faith, but didn't understand why God was allowing it. It was a lot to bear for one man. It really was.
It's literally like there's just a wall up in their mind and they aren't in there. Like they're physically there, but they're not mentally there at all.
That person, when they do that, you stop and think about what that took for him to take that gun. You get to think about that, how hard that had to be. When he realizes what he's done, that's when it's too late.
People just mistake or think that it's the person sitting alone in the lunchroom that's really depressed that is going to be the person that takes their life. Make sure you check on your happy people too.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and today we have a very special episode where I'm actually not going to be your host. But I get to introduce my family to you. As you know, we've been talking through this month of May, Mental Health Awareness Month, and shared many stories with you all, and some just amazing stories of survival, some amazing stories about pain and how people have gotten through that. And today, for the first time ever, my family and I are going to share our story with you. So with me to my right, I have my lovely bride, Jenna, who you've heard me reference many times on the show, but now you get to see on camera for the first time. And she brought with her emotional support dog, Charlie, who's going to be good today, right? Yeah? Yeah. She's one of our 3 pups. We have 2 Labradors. Obviously, they are not lap dogs, so they are not with us today, but Charlie is. So welcome, honey. And my mother-in-law, Pam, over here to my right. She's coming in from Indiana, and she's joining us today as we're celebrating Easter this weekend as we're recording this. But we're recording this for the month of May. And then taking over for show hosting duties is my brother, Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
So this was this is going to be an emotional episode. I knew that as we were discussing doing this and sharing our story, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around being a host and participant through this emotional topic. So I had to go through, just a sort of mental process of who I felt that I could trust with the show, and also that Pam and Jenna would feel comfortable with, and there was only one name that really came up, and that was Jordan. So without further ado, Jordan has been obviously in my life his whole life because he's my younger brother, but he's also worked side by side with me in the workplace, and not just a brother, one of my dearest friends, and also very, very talented on the leadership aspect. So great opportunity for you all to get to know him and host the show. So I'm going to shut up now, and which will be a little bit interesting for me to do on my own podcast. But Jordan, I'll let you take it from here.
Appreciate it, Josh. Well, first and foremost, it's an honor to be able to do this show with you guys. And obviously a topic that we hold, all of us hold near and dear to our hearts. And so yes, it will be emotional, but we definitely wanted to do it for the impact that we could potentially have, and to honor Tom and you know, our faith. So before we get into the topic for today, and before we get into how Tom did pass away, let's talk about how he lived. And I know that's an important topic for all of you, and to highlight and honor the man that he was. And so, Pam, I wanted to start with you.
Okay.
Tell us who Tom was to you and to everyone that he interacted with.
Well, Tom was my husband, and just a great man of God. He helped so many people and was just the best husband, father-in-law, grandpa, anything there was. He was very giving in everything, in every way. He gave charitable gifts. He gave his time. He never met a stranger. He just, you know, but he struggled. He struggled with depression, and he was very physically sick. So between that and then the struggle with the depression and all the stress he was under was really hard for him. But he was a very good man. No one knew he struggled really very much except for me, because I was with him on a daily basis with work and stuff. So, but yeah, he was the love of my life. And, you know, I'm thankful that we had him for as long as we did. That's what I keep trying to focus on. But it's been 5 years and 2 months today that he's been gone. So it's been difficult, up and down battle to go on. But
I realized that this morning that it was the 7th.
yeah, the 7th is always a hard day. But mostly I feel it coming up to that day. And then when the actual day hits, it's hard, but it's not as much as building up for some reason till that evening. I don't know why, but yeah. So.
Well, Jenna, going to you, what was it like growing up with your dad, and how did you observe him navigate this world from your eyes as a child and then as an adult?
I'm sure I didn't appreciate it at the time like I do now, and I still appreciate it more and more as time goes on. But he was very kind, loving, generous. If I got a meal I didn't like at dinner, he would trade me, and it didn't matter how disgusting my food looked.
I know.
Oh, honey, do you want mine? He was just he would give any part of himself for other people. He was he was just a very kind, caring, loving person. That's, even our kids were, you know, young when he passed away. Our oldest was 6, but that's what they remember of him too.
Yeah.
They just remember how kind and loving Papa was. But yeah, and then he was an entrepreneur too. He owned a business and was very aggressive, but he was always honest, even if
Very much integrity.
people around him weren't. And so it was fun to watch kind of the wheels turning in his mind when he, you know, would be doing things with the business. And he was really sharp. And he was a fun guy to be around. He was easy.
He was easy.
Yeah, he'd go with the flow, and he had 2 daughters and a wife, and no other boys in the family. So
he knew how to
be
be
patient.
Yeah. Oh, he had to be.
Yeah, and I think he taught Josh a thing or two about that when we had 1 daughter and then 2 daughters and then 3 daughters. But
yeah, I had to stick up for him a bit.
Yeah, I know. We didn't realize we pushed him around a little bit.
Well, he was just an easy guy.
He was easy. And then on vacation, I'm like, hey, Tom, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Enough of what these girls want to do.
His kindness and patience, though, were one thing. And then there was another side of him where he was very masculine.
Yeah.
He grew up farming. He could fix anything.
He loved shooting guns with us.
Yeah, he did. He loved that. He loved it with you guys. He didn't care how much it's cost him in bullets.
Yeah.
And
one observation that I had in getting to know your family, Pam and Jenna, is I could see that because he only had daughters, once Josh and Elliot came into his life, I could really see him light up.
Yeah.
And whether it was shooting guns, which is something he loved in general, but I think he, finally had his sons or son-in-laws.
Exactly. That's how he felt too.
And that was cool to see from the outside, because I think that was cool for Josh as well to have a father-in-law that not only was all those things that you mentioned and kind and generous, but that he could go and do manly stuff with as well. And it seemed like a good friend to you. So perfect segue into, Josh, your take on Tom and what your relationship was like with him as a son-in-law to him.
Yeah, it started out, I think anytime you're in a relationship with someone's daughter, like and all the movies and everything, portray a certain way about how father-in-laws are supposed to be and son-in-laws are supposed to be. So I think we're set up a little bit, I don't know, in just a way where father-in-laws and son-in-laws aren't supposed to like each other. And I got an opportunity to tell this story with my testimony recently when I spoke at an event. I started off light because evidently I didn't ask for Jenna's hand in marriage. I told Tom I was going to marry her.
Did too.
And so I think this was like right before our wedding.
I thought it was funny.
Not surprised at all, Josh.
In my head, I asked, but evidently it was the assumed close because I did have a conversation with him about it, and then he brought it up and he told me this, and I said, "So are we good?" He's like, "Yeah, little buddy, we're good."
Little buddy, he always called you little buddy.
So I got to tell that story. So what was cool about it was it wasn't that normal, father-in-law, son-in-law strife because he's such a good person. I mean, there was initially, like, I was taking his baby girl, his youngest daughter, a couple states away. Like, the one thing I know about the Rubel family is, like, they're within 2 square miles of each other, all of them. And so most people, wouldn't know that. So, like, Jenna's the only one
she is.
that was pulled away at that time. So I know that was tough for them and for him, and Pam being her best friend, like, I know that was tough. And at the same point, like, we were starting a life up here as I was already ingrained in business. And so that was tough. But, like, going to visit in all of the different conversations we'd have, like, they'd go shopping and we'd go see a movie like Star Wars or Avengers or something. And, like, just the conversations we have were just so different. Like, what people strive for in life, I believe, is relationships where they can be real and relationships where they can talk about God and business and like just deep things. And, like, Tom was the perfect person to listen and talk, and just, like, it was the easiest thing ever, easiest person ever to speak with on just life's real things. Not only a good sounding board and good with advice, a great ear to listen, but also engaging and fun and funny.
Yeah.
Like, his laugh and his smile were contagious.
They were.
And that's what most people saw, right? What Pam described, like, and, like, for me, like, I didn't know he was hurting as bad as he was. Like, I knew there was times he was physically sick. Like, the year we got married, he beat cancer. And there was times where he had major gut issues that, I knew all that, but Pam and Tom really kept the mental strife, from me. So every time I was around him, like, it was more just us being buddies and doing fun things and having deep conversations.
It sounds like, as you described that the part about his personality really shined through with people that he loved.
Everybody.
Right? But he loved everybody.
Yeah, there wasn't anybody he didn't love.
Fair. When you think, as you describe that, despite all of the pain that he was going through and struggles that he had, when he got an opportunity to open up to an individual and just have a deep conversation, not the shallow, surface level stuff, is when you really got to see who Tom was.
Yeah. And if you observe him, like, we'd be in a Cracker Barrel and he'd walk up to a family and be like, "You have a beautiful family."
Yeah. And he made friends everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think he hurt so bad inside over a lot of things and all the stress that he, would see somebody like that or just, he wanted to help other people so they didn't hurt. And that was a gift that he had. I mean, he was such a man of God.
I think other people brought him a lot of joy too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. You and Jenna, or you and Jesse, sorry. Our girls, both J's, it's kind of like, and then we got Josh.
Well, it'd be like our mom, and if Jake, Josh, and Jordan, she'd yell 3 names. You know which one I'm taking.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. But definitely. Yeah. I'm just really thankful, though, that he was able to meet all the grandkids. That's one of the things I am so in a picture with every one of them holding them. So, but, I wish you could see him grow up. But I think he's watching them from heaven. I know he is. So I know he is. So, but.
Well, Pam, back to you. You had built such a beautiful life and business and family, and we're blessed with grandkids, and we're obviously heavily involved in your church for everybody that knows you, and giving back to those in need. From the outside looking in, even myself included, but your community and other people that maybe didn't know you as well or as intimately, there was this internal struggle, as you guys have just described, that not many knew.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. What was that like? And I guess maybe how long was he struggling with that mental health?
Well, he struggled with that off and on since probably when we left the family business. He started to feel like, he said, everything is going great. This was back in 89. But I just can't, I don't know what it is. He said, there's something inside me that I just feel depressed and I shouldn't. And I had no idea what that felt like at that time. And so I just said, well, let's just go do something else fun. Because that was kind of like what I always do. Just let's think of something fun to do. And, I didn't know. And then he did go to the doctor and he got on some medicine, which helped him a lot. But then he would get to a point where he would think he was doing okay, and then he'd get off of it, and then he'd go on doing something else. And then if something stressful came up, we could see it, but he didn't know. And so then he was on different medicines, and had he found one that really would have worked for him, it would have, I don't know, but he was having trouble sleeping too. So, but it started back in 89 off and on, but then he'd be really good. He'd do really good as long as he stayed on the medicine. Okay. And then he was able to sleep, but then business would go really good. And then Tom, being the man that he was, he had most of the people that he trusted, and I trusted too, and he had good friendships with all, the different people we did business with. They became more like family to us. But then we had a business partner there towards the last 4 years, I think it was, who we started a leasing company with in Texas and had some trucks there, and he turned into be a crook. And he was in with it with his one brother, and things just kind of got sideways, and found out the guy was stealing from us, and then Tom felt like a failure, and I became kind of like his counselor at night. I never knew what I was going to go home to. If I was gone I was in my office during the day working with him and stuff, but by night, if I would go somewhere, come home, it was tough. Yeah. Because I'm not a counselor, and it was really hard to see him struggle like that. But
it sounds like, based on everything that, in the ways that you've described, Tom, that he didn't want what you guys were going through struggle-wise to impact anybody else, and so he internalized a lot of that.
He talked to me about it and stuff, but he was a fixer. And if he couldn't fix something, then that was what really was hard, and he couldn't fix this. And he was really sick too. He'd lost tons of weight from the colitis. And a good friend of ours, Denny Howard, said that it meant when your gut is not in check, your brain isn't either. And it was really messing with him. And the more weight he lost, the worse he got. I think he was having some heart issues. And it was just really hard to watch him. I mean, I didn't want to lose him like that, that's for sure. But yeah, I felt so bad. And there's things I've gone back in my mind, what could I have done more? Well, I was with him like all the time. I mean, I didn't go in the bathroom with him all the time and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I didn't even come to Wisconsin for a while because I was so worried about him. And it was really hard to watch that. It was just like, it wasn't the Tom that, I loved him dearly and still do, but it wasn't the Tom that I married. He became like a little boy, almost scared little boy, and never lost his faith, but didn't understand why God was allowing it. He just couldn't understand because it was a lot to bear for one man. Yeah. It really was.
to hear you say 1989, I would have never known. But that was obviously a very long time that he was struggling with it.
Yeah.
Almost 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it's just, I don't know, some people just have that, I guess your brain doesn't make enough serotonin or something like that. And you can't help it. You just literally can't help it. And, but he tried harder than anybody I know to make everything perfect for everyone. And, but if he couldn't fix something, he felt like a failure, and he was never a failure in our eyes, but it was hard to watch. Our good friend, Denny Howard, he's a counselor and a good friend of Tom's and a pastor. And he told me one time when I was asking if there was anything else I could have done to prevent this, he said, Pam, you're the reason he stayed alive for as long as he did. And so I try to go back to that and think, well, there was nothing I could have done. I tried. And I know he loved me. I know he did. He loved all of us. He didn't want to hurt any of us. And he did it in his mind, think twice. In his mind, he thought this was going to save me and everyone, because it saved the business. His brother wouldn't be mad at him. And just, it was bad. But
yeah, well, I think you can tell by how much he gave, what you and him built together in your family, that he was the farthest thing from a failure.
Right, exactly. And the thing that bothered him the most in the end too was that because this guy in Texas did what he did, we were on standby basically with the bank till they didn't want us to use other money to pay it. They wanted it to come from Texas, and it really, he couldn't buy and sell like he did. And so that was really hard for him. But the biggest thing was he couldn't give the money to people like he wanted. That's what he wanted to help people. And at that time we didn't know we had to, wait for a little bit. And so that really bothered him a lot. And so, it was a tough thing.
Josh and Jenna, moving to you guys. In Christmas of 2017, this was the last time you saw Tom alive. What was that trip like, and what was different?
Wasn't that when he met our youngest, Cam, for the first time?
Oh, was that the first time he met him? I thought he met him on Labor Day weekend. Maybe not.
Maybe he came up to see him. I can't remember, but
Yeah,
that
it was the last time.
when he had spent an extended period of time. I don't even like to look at pictures from that trip. 'Cause it was just hard.
Yeah.
It was. He wasn't himself. I know. He was very sick.
Glazed over, and
I know.
he was happy to see all of us, but he wasn't there anymore.
No, he wasn't.
It was
like his shell.
It was a hard trip because, so our fourth child is born, and so every Christmas, and Jordan, you knew this, but for the listeners, that we were trading back and forth between the Kosnicks and the Rubels.
Mm-hmm.
So our kids had never woken up at our house on Christmas morning. And we had already kind of had that in our mind, but that Christmas was, so we didn't know things were as bad as they were until we got there, because Pam and Tom had really, hid that pretty well from us. But because things were just we decided that trip, even we gotta have control over our kids' Christmas, because things said just the atmosphere there just wasn't good, and we didn't know we didn't know how things were going. It was he is withering away. He was, like Pam had said, just as far as weight was concerned, he was gaunt, he was very skinny, and he was usually healthily built like you and I. Obviously older, but he was a healthy man. This is a dude that never drank a drop of alcohol. When we would go to the restaurants, would eat chicken with no seasoning or fish with no seasoning, clean vegetables. He tried everything.
That's when he was trying to get better. Yeah.
Well, he did that for a long time.
He did, yeah.
He took really good care of his body.
He did.
He beat cancer.
Yeah, that's right. He did.
So that's why in the end it was just you worked so hard to stay alive.
I know. That's what I think too. So
that trip was really hard for all of us. The thing that I go back to, and I know we'll get to this, but is like the what ifs that your mind plays in certain scenarios. Like Pam mentioned some of hers, like he pulled me into their laundry room and we were talking for maybe 2 hours in there, standing up. There's no seats in there except for the toilet, but neither of us sat on it. But because he didn't want Jenna and Pam to hear what he was telling me. Now Pam knew everything, but he really didn't want Jenna to hear. And because I didn't know where he was at mentally, like I was trying to help him solve a business problem in my head. Like in my head, he was confiding in me, and I was helping him solve a business problem. And so the what ifs that I play, like if I knew, like I wouldn't be trying to solve a business problem. I'd be like hugging him and loving him and telling him that this is not the way, and we need you, and all of those things. Instead of, I'm like sitting there like, Tom, you got to inspect what you expect. Like, get your ass to Texas. Like, he's telling me what this guy's doing. I was like, he's fucking stealing from you. Like, go. Like, and I'm getting frustrated. And now I look back and I'm like,
it was like his mind wasn't
so
working.
Wrong. You're right. But like, I just think about it in that instance. Like, I had no idea.
Well, you
what
didn't know.
He was.
You didn't know.
Going through in his head, and I just look back at that and how, bad I handled it in that instance.
I don't know that you handled it bad. I think he just needed to talk to you. I don't think that you handled it badly. You didn't know. His mind wasn't processing things well.
Yeah.
So.
It was good that, Cam doesn't remember him, but he's always going to have those pictures with him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember when you came back from that trip and told me how it felt, and I think as you're describing that, because I don't know if you had told me that exact story before, Josh, but knowing that you didn't know how bad it was until you were there, it came as a shock to you in how he looked and felt, and just the energy or lack thereof that he had. Kind of hard to have that awareness in the moment when you're talking to him that, oh no, it's actually, it's something else. It's emotional, it's mental, it's physical. It's not just this business thing that, cause that's what he was talking to you about.
Yeah. And again, hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah.
But these are the mental problems that we all go through, and grief and.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't realize that he talked to you like that for a while. I didn't know that.
And something, too, that we noticed, like I said, his eyes were glazed over. When someone's in that state of mind, which I would have never known because I didn't know anybody who had gotten to that point before, but it's literally like there's just a wall up in their mind, and they aren't in there. And I don't know how to fix it. I'm not a counselor, but I don't know if you're looking for a sign in someone as to what to watch for. That's something that if they're gone behind there.
It sounds like what you're describing is like there's a disconnect. Like they won't let you in, and they're not letting their true selves out.
Yeah, like they're physically there, but they're not mentally there at all.
Yeah, that's what Jesse said too.
Or emotionally
isn't fully there. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Pam, to transition, and as hard as this may be, could you briefly take us through the tragic date of February 7th, 2018?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so, got up that morning. Tom went over to the office. He was in a really good mood because I talked to the attorney in Texas the night before. I talked to the attorney and the guy where some of our trucks were, and they were sequestered because of this guy not paying stuff and for the bank and all. Anyway, so the attorney calls the next morning on the other side, and he says, we're not releasing that sequester. So, it's just too bad. And nothing Tom could do. And I got a message about 11 o'clock. And so I went over there and talked to him, and he was just glazed over, even worse, more than anything I've ever seen. He had a lunch appointment, as he always did every first Wednesday of the month with one pastor friend, Wayne Fay, and he had canceled it. And I had a lunch appointment with the pastor's wife because we wanted to pray for Tom because I was really worried about him. And I said, I need to cancel that if you canceled yours. And I was trying to talk to him and telling him it was going to be okay. And he said, it's not going to be okay. And he said, God's playing a cruel joke on us. I go, no, he's not, Tom. And he said, no, he's not. He goes, I just can't think straight. And I just said, we just need to pray. And so we did. And then I didn't want to leave him. And I gave him a hug and kissed him on the cheek. And I left. And that was the last time I saw him. And then the day went on, and I got several calls on my phone from different truck dealers. Pam, you need to go talk to Tom. We're really concerned. Something's not right. And I said, I know it hasn't been right. And I said, I'm heading back. And he was gone. And he had a haircut appointment that afternoon. And I finally got a hold of him because he didn't answer the first time. And he just was not there. Like, he just was like, answered the phone, and I could tell he was crying. He said he ate a sandwich, and he was going. He goes, just if you could have my supper ready later. And I said, sure, I will. He told me what time he'd be back. And so he went, got his haircut, filled his truck up with gas, I saw later. This wasn't planned. It was in his mind, but it wasn't planned. But he got to the point where he just couldn't stand it. And I kept waiting. He wasn't home for supper. And I thought, this is really strange because he needs to be home here. So I finally looked out the corner on our other piece of land across the road, and his truck was sitting over there, and it was cold out. And I didn't see any exhaust. And I'd been texting him, and it wasn't getting read, and I'd been calling. And so I jumped in my truck, and I backed out, and I drove over, pulled up beside him. I opened up the passenger door of the Avalanche, and his back was like leaned up. He was sideways, leaned up against the armrest. And I touched his back, and I was like, Tom. And I kind of touched him like that and didn't move. And then I was freaking out. I ran around to the driver's side. The driver's side door was open. His legs were out. And his arm was up like he had tried to get out. And anyway, I didn't even realize it, but I ran right through shattered glass in the back window, and I was like, oh my gosh. But I touched him. I saw his face, and I knew he was gone because his eyes were open, but he had huge tears down his cheeks. So I know that it had just probably happened. And his face was really greenish blue. I think they say he shot himself in the heart twice. And they said that, I guess, that they can get black and blue from the blood stopping or whatever. And then I backed up. That's when I knew. I was afraid to touch him because I didn't want to get blamed for this because I couldn't tell. The Lord spared me from seeing any blood. Apparently there was some, but I didn't see it because he had a tan jacket on, but I guess it was there. But so I just backed up to the back of the Avalanche, and I just stood there, and I couldn't stop shaking. And I was like, for just a brief second, I was relieved he was out of his pain, just a brief second. And then it was like, wait, he's gone. And what am I going to do? I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then I hit my phone. My brother-in-law, Jeff, it was weird because I just barely touched it. And I called him. I didn't even realize I hit his number. And I told him what I found. And I said, you guys need to come here. And he's like, oh, well, I bet he's all right. And I go, no, he's gone, Jeff. And he goes, well, we tried calling him, or we were trying to get his mind on something else today because we knew he was down. And I said, well, you need to come here. And so then Jeff and Nick came pulling in, and Jeff jumped out and was trying to wake him up. And it was so sad. He was, Tommy. And then Nick kind of looked and came over and just grabbed me and held on to me for the longest time. And it was just awful. Awful. And then police cars coming, and it was like I was up here watching everything for like a long time. And then it was just strange. And then Becky, I guess, called you guys.
Jeff's wife.
Yeah, my sister. Actually, we married brothers. So, but yeah, Becky, I guess, called them. They were getting ready to go on a trip.
Yeah.
And, but it was just, awful. It was cold, and it was snowing, but then Becky or these guys came then later because they were supposed to go on a trip. But Tom, he just struggled so much, and it was just the look on his face. And I found out later that the second bullet was because basically he wasn't gone. He had changed his mind. And so then the second bullet took him because he probably knew he wasn't going to make it. And I just didn't know. I didn't know there were 2 bullets until the funeral home when I was feeling his chest. And I couldn't figure out what that was. And he said, "Oh, that's just his ribs," the funeral director. And I said, "That's not his ribs."
He tried to cover it up. He told Elliot and I.
Yeah. And I said, "No, what is it, John? Is that bullets?" And he said, "Yeah." And I couldn't figure out why there was 2. But then you go ahead, Josh, and yeah.
Well, Josh, I know I remember getting a call from our parents that night, and I know you had taken the initial call. What was it like from your experience?
Well, like Pam said, her sister Becky. So put it in context. Our phones were blowing up, but mostly mine. I think Jenna missed a call as well. But
I handed you the phone because we were trying to get out of the house.
yeah, so
we were supposed to go to.
So I had worked a half day that day because we were leaving to go to Mexico. We were taking the entire our top salespeople and their spouses to Mexico, Jordan included, and I had my COO, my chief operating officer, headed to our house. We're packing. Jenna's pumping, breastfeeding Cam. So she was trying to get him down before our mom, Jordan and I's mom, was coming over to watch the kids while we were in Mexico. And so my phone's blowing up, and finally I listened to a message, and it was Becky, and she was crying, and she said, "Call me," and I knew.
You did know.
And so I called her, and she said, "Tom's gone." And I don't remember what else she said, but I broke down. And so I managed to call Haley right away, our COO, and said, because she was on her way over, literally at that moment, I said, "Hey, I can't go." And told her. I was out in the garage because I didn't want anyone to hear me. And then I moved myself to the basement because, again, didn't want anyone to hear me. And I was trying to get a hold of Mom and couldn't get a hold of her. Got a hold of Dad, and I was just talking to him. I was like, I don't know how to tell her. I didn't know how I was going to walk upstairs and tell my wife. And so when I did, I asked her to give me Cam, and I held him while I told her, and she just collapsed. And so, yeah, that was hard because we're planning on going on this trip, and instead drove 6 hours straight to get to Indiana. And before I left, Mom was there, told Ella and Harper not exactly what happened, but that Papa had died, and that we were going down there.
Well, I've observed not only through you guys, but in some of my own experiences, that there's a different kind of grief, when it comes to suicide and death by suicide, especially when it's loved ones. I guess to any of you, why do you think that is?
It's a complicated grief. You just can never have any closure, basically. I didn't get to say goodbye. None of us did. And, it's an unbearable pain. That's all I can say that you carry with you daily, but you learn to live with it. You have to. You have got to learn to live with it because you have to survive, because you cannot do this too. And they say the person that finds them has a pretty high suicide rate. And I'm not going to be that person. I just can't. I told myself right away, this is something that happens, unfortunately, to millions and millions of wives and families. And I'm going to do what I can to just fight this because I've got to get through it and I've got to find a purpose in life and joy. But it is a terrible kind of grief. I'm not saying anybody else that loses loved ones is not awful either.
Of course.
It's just, you just can't, there's no closure. That's what I think.
I saw, I don't know if it was a quote or something about it one time soon after, because it's hard to kind of piece things together. And it said it doesn't, it takes the burden from that person, but it just transfers the burden to all the survivors.
Yeah.
And whatever else is piled on top of that. And I think the other part of it too is you don't want that person's legacy to be tarnished either, especially when it's your loved one, because, unfortunately there are people who ask insensitive questions or make insensitive comments. Yeah. Even people close to you, it can be anyone really, but, you don't want people to look at your family and go, oh, that's the person whose,
that's how
dad took their life, or whose husband, that has nothing to do with the person he was. That was a struggle he had, and it was an illness, and that doesn't define anything about his life.
Nothing. No.
Yeah, what they said is all very true, and the only thing I'd add to it is the what if game that we play. Like when there's cancer.
Yeah, that too.
When there's cancer or a car accident or anything else, like you're like, you don't play the game of what could I have done, right? Because I can't prevent cancer, right? There's nothing I could do to have prevented that cancer from entering a loved one's body. But you get these different, like again, me going back to the laundry room example, feeling like I could have or should have done something more to have helped them. And I think those, even though, any therapist that has talked to any of us is going to walk us through that and why that's not true, but those are the feelings that you go through and thoughts that go through your head when you're grieving someone that's taken their life.
Yeah.
And I remember when we left Christmas that time, he was crying when he said goodbye to me, and he just had this different look in his eyes. And I just think back, did he know? Did he know that was the last time we were going to see each other?
I think he didn't think he was going to survive.
I feel terrible. I didn't know.
I just think he was so sick, physically and mentally, and his heart was bothering him, and he just was having so many physical things. And actually, the week after he died, I got a cancer report back, and he had cancer in him somewhere, don't know where, but his blood test was high.
One other thing that Jenna mentioned that Pam didn't, some people are assholes. And that also attributes to the grief. Like no one's typically an asshole when someone dies of cancer or when someone dies in a tragic car accident. There's typically not people that are an asshole in that regard. But Pam's at the gravesite cleaning it up, and someone literally stopped, rolled down their window, and decided to yell out at her, "Oh, I heard about him. He's not in heaven, right?"
He's in hell. That's what they said.
Yeah, there were people. There were 2 or 3 at the funeral who had that, who were under that impression as well. And there was one family member who told my mom that it was because she wasn't with him all the time, which she was. I mean, you can't be with someone 24 hours a day.
Said you should have done better than that. You should have done better than that. I was like,
we had people blame it on our faith. We had people blame it on him being on antidepressants.
Yeah, and he wasn't on
which he wasn't even on them at the time. Had he been on them, they could have saved his life, maybe. I don't know. That's another what if.
Yeah, I don't think so. The Lord knew when his death was going to happen, but unfortunately he allowed it. He allowed this to happen, and it's sad, and I hate it so bad. But, I think that Tom being who he was, and my faith, Tom was the spiritual leader of our family, and he, I counted on that, and maybe I counted on it too heavily sometimes because I needed to stand on my own 2 feet too, which my faith has grown 100% since he's left, because that's what I've leaned into. And, I swore I would never marry or date ever again. He was it. Well, funny thing is, God changes things. He changed my heart. And I did it would have been the interview on the 3rd anniversary of his death with a great guy who I love, and I'm going to marry him in about 2 weeks. But he did an interview, and we were talking, and he actually was friends with Tom, and Tom really liked him, pointed him out, said, "That's the guy if something ever happens to me."
He really
did? And I was like, "Don't ever say that."
Wow.
And he said it to me twice. He goes, "He's just such a good guy. He's had a lot of things in his life." And I was just like, "Oh, don't say that." Well, then he got out of his car that day, and something in my heart changed, and I heard him talking to his daughter on his phone, and he talked to his daughter just like he did our girls. And I thought, oh, he's really sweet. But, I can't like him. This is too weird. And I remember leaving the cemetery after he did the interview there and thinking, that's really weird. I feel like I got butterflies like I did after I met Tom. So when Josh and Jenna came home for that anniversary, we were out snowmobiling for that. And because I had got a snowmobile to try to make it fun that weekend. And I said, I stopped Josh in the garage and I'm like, Josh, I said, I think I might like this guy. I don't know. This is weird. And Josh is like, huh? And I was like, I don't know what to do. And then he's like, well, you should pray about it. So anyway, I did, but
I'm starting to notice a theme. You tend to like to tell Josh things before you tell Jenna.
She tests Josh out.
Well, maybe
Test the waters quick.
Well, I just wanted to see what he thought. I didn't really want to tell the girls right away, and I certainly didn't want to tell Jessie because I knew she was going to take it really hard, and I wasn't sure how hard.
Yeah.
Jenna did pretty good, but
you asked me.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to do.
Yeah, Jessie will definitely take it harder than Jenna, but I think both of them will understand.
And it's taken a while for Jessie. She's just come around pretty much, but I just, and she doesn't understand, and I know it's hard to understand how I still love Tom. I mean, half my heart is in that grave. Yeah. I can't help it. And Jeff knows that. He's, he never had that kind of love, but I mean, I love him too. And I'll love him as my husband. And, Tom's in heaven waiting, but Jessie doesn't understand how I can still, even though I'm excited, I still have a lot of sadness in me, and I can't help it. And she's like, well, I don't think that should be that way, but it's just hard to explain. Jenna said it's hard for her to understand too, just because you're not in my shoes. But
yeah, I've never been in that position.
Yeah.
So I don't expect to understand.
Yeah, it's just, and Jeff knows. And so he's the only guy I think I could be with that would understand. Most guys wouldn't let me have my pictures of Tom pretty much plastered around the house, but I'm trying to be better with my new place. So,
well, even that, I think what I appreciate about Jeff is he doesn't even, not one iota of him tries to be Tom.
No, and that's the other thing. He said he would never be.
For him to send flowers to Jessie and Jenna on the anniversary, for him to just be himself and not I've not once questioned, is he trying to step into someone's shoe? He's not at all.
No.
He's just himself, and he loves you.
Yeah.
And he's just good like that.
Yeah, and I'm thankful. I'm very thankful.
I wanted to point out a couple observations, or I would say takeaways, things I learned from that last question. It sounds like there's remaining question marks that make death by suicide lack closure, as you had said, Pam, because people that haven't experienced it can't understand it. There's insensitive things that are either said or even feelings and energy you get from people that don't quite understand it, which makes it maybe more difficult than a natural death or more of an accident type death. And then the hindsight being 2020 or the what if we would have done something differently? What if, those are kind of the three things that I heard you guys say that make it different and perhaps more difficult, or maybe not more difficult than others, but different.
Definitely different.
Yeah, and people will they'll just pass me and they don't know what to say, or they look at me like it's a shame thing, and it's not a shame thing. It's just, and then at first I was feeling like every time I go somewhere, people were staring at me thinking, oh, that's the woman who drove her husband to suicide. And it wasn't like that, but that was in my mind. But I've had tons of counseling, and I still will go. And I went to Grief Share, this really good group of people that, we all talked about it. And I went not even a month after Tom died. I knew if I didn't start something quickly, I wasn't going to survive this. And I had to. And I'm on medicine. I just, I've had to do everything. I've got special friends that help me, that would be there for me when I called and stuff. But you have to work on it. And grief is a journey. And it's up and down, and everybody's journey is different. Jessie she has a really hard time. We all do in our own way. But you just have to keep on it daily. I wake up in the middle of the night. I think of Tom. I mean, and I just, it's just weird. And, but I have to think, okay, I'm thankful we had him for as long as we did. I'm thankful for the gift of his life. He was a great guy, but I have to keep moving forward. And this is what I'm trying to do. I mean, it still seems like yesterday. Mm-hmm. It just does. It's just how it is.
I just want to point out what you said, and it perfectly segues into our next question. You can tell you're a veteran podcaster now.
Oh, can you?
You're like leading me perfectly into the next topic, but I just want everyone to maybe rewind that and listen to it again, because what you just said in talking through it and finding help right away is exactly what we're trying to promote, and not trying to internalize all of your issues, not trying to battle this battle and this war on your own. You
can't get through this on your own. You have to find some help, some comfort. I had a couple women at the church that night when we were doing the visitation. There was thousands of people that came, I mean, literally in line for hours to get up to where I was. And I had two women that one, her husband took his life, and she was at the church, and she gave me her number, and the other one had lost her husband to cancer, but a good friend, her husband was good friends with Tom. And they just said, you're going to want to call. You're going to need to talk. And so they've been really great about that. And then I just, things I've done, I would have never done in a million years. I would have never talked like this. I wouldn't have been on the TV, on news. But it's just that I really felt that I needed to, have a purpose to this. Not right away, I didn't, but I learned that in Grief Share, that you need to find a purpose. You need to change things at your home or whatever you need to do to survive. Well, I did all that other stuff. And I lived out where Tom and I built this house, where he died across the road. I have a memorial over there for him because I wanted people to honor him and know what a great man he was. And that I didn't want people to look at that spot like, it was just a horrible place. I mean, it's a sad place, but it's also, I think that, I honestly, this is going to sound dumb, and you can believe it if you want, but I've seen angels over there. And it's just amazing. And the dreams I've had of Tom, things that have happened, and lots of people, I've had several truck dealers call me and say, crying, saying, Tom came to me in a dream and he wanted me to tell you that this is his message. He loved you then, loves you now, loves you, something like that. I forget exactly what the line is. Still, always has, always will. Well, the funny thing is, it's on the memorial over there on the bench. That's the message that I put on the back of the bench. So and nobody knew that was on there. So, it's just like there's been too many things that went with that. But then, I mean, I bought books. I've done everything. And in counseling, I have a PTSD counselor now, and she's a Christian. And we actually did some really intense stuff. And I can't think what it's called, but you hold these, they're like balls. You hold onto them. Yeah, and she has a thing. She's like, okay, I want you to take yourself to that night, and I want you to tell me, how you feel. You think about it for a minute now, and then she'll redo it, and you think that Jesus and the angels picture that they're coming up with you, helping to find, you're finding Tom, and how does that make you feel? And after you do that for a while, it's really weird how it does help. And you wouldn't think it would, but it's I just can't think what the kind of therapy it's called.
Well, it sounds like it's part of what's bringing you closure from what maybe you didn't have before.
I don't think I'm ever going to get closure. I don't think that I ever can, but I need to be able to, when I get to these points where I feel like I'll get where I feel so much despair that I can't stand it. And then I have to go to these, and I remember I Jesus, please, just help me and help me to remember you have Tom in your care. He's healthy. He's good. There's nothing that we could have done to change this. This was part of your plan, maybe to, I don't know, step out in my faith more. And, maybe the Lord wanted to use me this way to help people. Hopefully it helps save somebody's life or help some wife who can't. I mean, I remember being on my living room floor, just crying and screaming out to the Lord, I can't do this. I remember going out the back porch, sitting in the cold, hoping I would freeze to death for a while. And I thought, okay, this is really stupid, Pam. You can't do this stuff, but I didn't want to harm myself, but I just thought, I just don't understand this. And so when I get in my deepest despair sometimes, what's really weird, this has happened to me several times. I'm just like, I don't understand this, God. I'll look up at the sky on a clear day and there's a cross, a cloud painted. I mean, and it happens, and I'm like, Tom and Jesus know what's going on down here,
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel a peace. But I mean, I don't always feel. I mean, I just I have my moments. I can't help it. You just will. And then I have had family turn on me, and it's really hard. Both sides. And I've had people tell me that they're mad at him. That doesn't help when you tell people because that person, when they do that, you stop and think about what that took for him to take that gun. You get to think about that, how hard that had to be.
Yeah. Because
he was so emotionally messed up and lost his mind in a split second. And then when he realizes what he's done, that's when it's too late.
Yeah.
But
well, I want to give you a lot of credit because there's probably people that are listening right now that don't have the courage to admit what you just admitted and what they're going through, the experience of just feeling helpless and crying out to your Lord, leaning into your faith. And so hopefully that helps somebody, like you said. And
I couldn't do it without the Lord. There's no way. He's given me strength, incredible strength that I never thought I could have. So I don't know.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Josh and Jenna, what do you do, now that we're 5 years removed and from my observation, you all are living healthy, mentally healthy lives. What do you do for your mental health?
I try to be aware of my mental health. I know that if I exercise, I feel better. If I eat healthy, I feel better. Not everybody enjoys that, but if I don't work out for a few days, I notice, my I don't have depression issues, but I just don't feel as, peppy as normal. And so that's something that I've committed to do because I know it makes me mentally stronger and mentally and emotionally healthier. The kids are a part of this whole thing too, because our kids don't know exactly how my dad passed away. They know his heart stopped, but they don't know how. They will eventually know. It's not something we're going to hide from them, but they're not at an age where we feel like they could responsibly handle that. So going through that grief and not letting the kids, kind of shielding the kids from part of that has been,
it's been hard,
complicated. Mm-hmm. But I think just being really cognizant, leaning on each other as well. I personally, I knew I wanted to do something once the kids all got into school, but I didn't know what. And I always just kind of was like, well, I'll figure it out when we got there. Mm-hmm. And then my dad, I noticed when he had ulcerative colitis, his anytime he was struggling with that was when his brain really started struggling. Mm-hmm. And so now I've decided to go back to school and I'm studying nutrition because that's something that I really want to figure out is the gut-brain connection. How are they connected? What can people do to fix that? How can people not have to deal with that in the future? How, it just doesn't seem, seems like something we should know with all of the, medical, but there is definitely so much science to it. And so I guess that's kind of been part of my purpose, and his death is trying to honor him through that, through maybe somebody else won't have to suffer in the future from both of those problems.
Mm-hmm. So she's getting her master's while raising 4 kids and dealing with my shit too.
And 3 dogs and cooking and cleaning and everything else.
So
and our faith has been huge.
Faith has been huge.
Yeah.
I've definitely noticed the working out thing for her. Mm-hmm. And same for me. Like I work out, and then for coaching, I get, as a coach, I still always have a coach, and he is a Christian as well and helps me through some of those times. But I would also say that the biggest thing for me has been having a platform be it social media, this podcast, whatnot, to talk about it. If the listener, if you've been listening this whole time to Spartan Leadership, like you've heard me reference the story. So now you're hearing it for the first time fully, but being able to talk about it and have that mission to be able to help save someone else has attached meaning and purpose to such a tough event in our lives.
Yeah, and I've noticed you find similarities or be able to relate and empathize with people on your show and in a way that you wouldn't really ever be able to if you didn't have that. And now obviously we wish you didn't have that ability for the reason that you have it. But the fact of the matter is that allows you to empathize. And even if the topic isn't your father-in-law and Tom, there are opportunities for you to learn and grow and from other people's stories in a way that you wouldn't have before. And I thought and hoped you would mention that, because I think as hard as this conversation is and can be, not only are we hopefully helping others, but I think it can be therapeutic for us and you guys especially.
I think so.
Something else I've learned through this too is kind of related, but be aware of your family history. We didn't know that my dad's family had a history of
the mental health,
severe mental health issues. And one time, I don't remember how it came up, but my grandpa said, "Oh, that was your great great uncle or something," and they died by suicide as well. And I mean, mental health is anything from anxiety to depression to anger issues to domestic abuse. It can be a lot of different things, and so. It
manifests in different ways.
Yeah, it can manifest in different ways.
Yeah.
But know your risk. No one is immune to the risk, but some people are at higher risk of it as well, and it should be taken seriously.
Well, and I forgot to mention too, Tom's it would have been his aunt.
Oh yeah.
We were on vacation. I forget what year it was, but anyway, she was like maybe 2 or 3 years before Tom. She took her life, and she had gone out in the garage and turned on the car, and she tried to stop it because nobody found her for the whole weekend. She was laying on the concrete in the garage, but she tried to stop it, but she was overcome. Well, then 6 months later, his uncle took his life because he had cancer so bad he couldn't stand it, and he shot himself. And then it was just, and Tom, it was just like, this has to stop in this family. We have to get this under control. It's just, everybody needs to be aware that, this is an issue. And
it's not something that can be brushed.
Well, it does. It affects everyone. And I mean, they didn't want to hurt us, but the hurt comes out. And they were so hurt. But it transfers, like Jenna said, it transfers, and it's for the rest of your life. It's just something that you just can't get over. So I don't know. It's just
I hate that someday we're going to have to transfer this to our children.
Yeah, it's just
when we tell them the actual story of what happened.
It's not like for me. When Tom was alive, my life was just great. I just was happy all the time. No matter if there was something sad going on, I could deal with it. I mean, I woke up excited for the day, and, even in the bad times, I mean, it was hard, but I was just happy to be with him. But I would wake up looking for fun stuff to do, and then this has completely changed my whole life. I feel like I have had to change everything. I've had to move just because I couldn't deal with being out there all the time. I've had to just like everything. It seems like I'm not the same person at all that I was.
Yeah,
I don't know. And I've tried. But
I think it's changed your life the most, but it's definitely changed the trajectory of all of our lives.
Well, sure. I mean, Jesse and Elliot and the kids, and, they live across the road from me. Well, when I lived out there, but it's hard for them. I mean, and they're there all the time, and it's hard too.
The last piece of that is like certain people are the glue to your family. And Tom definitely
was the glue. He was to everyone.
Some of the other family members on the outside of this circle, and Jesse and Elliot, like outside of that, have really treated you poorly and
I found out the true
and have
colors.
changed differently just because Tom's not holding the glue together.
Yeah, I know, and it's really sad. It's just really sad. I thought I was part of that family, but I don't feel like I was now. So. We were married for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
So,
Well, as we wrap up, any final thoughts on Tom, mental health, or anything else we talked about today?
Let's see. Josh, you start.
I'll start. I can start. I just think that for everyone, you need to understand that it's not the person that seems depressed.
Mm.
No one outside of Pam really knew how bad Tom was. Everyone else saw him as jovial, funny, caring, giving, all the positive qualities. I've often quipped that he was the closest thing alive like Jesus. And he would never in a million years compare himself to Jesus.
Oh, no,
but
he wouldn't, but he was.
my best example of Jesus walking because he was that good of a person. But you look at Robin Williams, Chris Farley, all these jovial people that are trying to make others laugh and in their private time have just an awful time internally.
Yeah.
And so I think that oftentimes people just mistake or think that it's the person sitting alone in the lunchroom that's really depressed that is going to be the person that takes their life. And by all means, like, make sure that person doesn't feel lonely either. But make sure you check on your happy people too.
Yeah, that's right. That is exactly right.
Did you guys have anything to add to that?
I don't know if I do or not. I don't think so.
All right, well, in closing, Spartans, thanks for tuning in today. As hard as this was for us to do, we wanted to do it to help as much as possible. We wanted to take our pain and make sure that it wasn't something that any of you ever have to experience. So if this helped just one person, one family, that would make this episode and our time, energy, and feelings to do this all the worth it. So with that being said, you know how I wrap up every episode. Good and greater the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.